You are listening to Azeroth Awakened, Chronicles of the World of Warcraft phenomenon. Subscribe to keep up to date on our latest audiobooks. Azeroth Awakened, Chronicles of the World of Warcraft phenomenon. Prologue echoes in the void. In the quiet corners of the internet, far removed from the bustle of cities and the hum of everyday life, a digital world began to stir. It was November 23rd, 2004, a seemingly ordinary Tuesday, but for millions across North America, it marked the genesis of something extraordinary. Servers hummed to life, login queues stretched into oblivion, and then, with a click and a flash, players stepped through a digital threshold into a place that would soon become as real, and in some respects, more meaningful than their physical surroundings. This was Azeroth, the sprawling fantasy realm of World of Warcraft. For a young couple named Jessica and Michael, who would meet years later within this very world, it began as an exciting new game. They would each spend countless hours exploring its forests, battling its beasts, and learning its intricate systems. Eventually, they joined the same guild, a band of digital adventurers, and discovered a connection that transcended the glowing screen. Their in-game companionship blossomed into real-world dates, shared laughter, and eventually, a wedding where many of their fellow guild members, friends they had only known through pixels and voice chat, gathered to celebrate. Their story, far from unique, began like so many others, with a single character creation, a nervous first quest, and the quiet, almost subconscious, understanding that this was more than just entertainment. World of Warcraft was not merely a video game, it was a societal phenomenon, a virtual world, and for millions, a second home. At its peak, it commanded the attention of 12 million paying subscribers worldwide, a number that dwarfed the populations of many countries. Over its nearly two-decade lifespan, more than 100 million accounts have been created, each representing an individual's journey through its evolving landscapes. For many, it provided solace during difficult times, forging friendships that endured real-world distances, job changes, and personal tragedies. For others, it was an escape, a place to be a hero, a master craftsman, or a cunning diplomat, away from the mundane. To truly understand World of Warcraft's seismic impact, we must first cast our minds back to the computing landscape of the late 1990s and early 2000s. The internet, still nascent for most households, was beginning its slow, determined crawl into homes via dial-up modems, then rapidly accelerating with the advent of widespread broadband. This technological leap was crucial, providing the necessary bandwidth for truly persistent online worlds. Before World of Warcraft, the realm of what were then known as massively multiplayer online role-playing games, or MMORPGs, was dominated by pioneers like Ultima Online, 1997, EverQuest, 1999, and Asheron's Call, 1999. These games laid the foundational blueprints. Persistent worlds where thousands of players could interact, vast landscapes to explore, and challenging content that often demanded social cooperation. They were immersive, often punishing, and built dedicated, if niche, communities. Alongside this technological evolution, popular culture was also in tune with grand fantasy narratives. Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings film trilogy, beginning in 2001, had captivated global audiences, bringing epic fantasy into the mainstream like never before. The appetite for sprawling fictional universes, where heroes battled ancient evils and magic defined the very fabric of existence, was at an all-time high. It was into this burgeoning digital frontier and receptive cultural climate that Blizzard Entertainment, already a venerable name in PC gaming with its groundbreaking Warcraft real-time strategy series, stepped forward. When rumors first began to circulate, then confirmed announcements followed. Of a Warcraft-themed MMORPG, the gaming world held its breath. The promise of Azeroth, of truly inhabiting the world they had only commanded from an overhead view in the RTS games, was intoxicating. Blizzard's reputation for meticulous design, polish, and an uncanny ability to distill complex genres into accessible, immensely fun experiences, fueled an immense wave of anticipation. Could they take the often hardcore, impenetrable nature of early MMORPGs and make it something millions could enjoy without sacrificing depth? They could, and they did. This book is a documentary in written form, charting the remarkable journey of World of Warcraft from its ambitious inception to its enduring status today. It will peel back the layers of its lore, delve into its evolving game mechanics, and explore the intricate ecosystem of its player community. We will examine its triumphs and its controversies, its role in shaping nascent online cultures, and the monumental business enterprise that sustained it. Through the lens of World of Warcraft, we will trace not just the history of a beloved game, but an unprecedented experiment in digital citizenship, a testament to the power of shared virtual experiences, and ultimately, how one game transcended its medium to influence technology, psychology, economics, and fundamentally reshape how millions interact online. Welcome to Azeroth, the Seeds of War, from orcs and humans to a world apart. Before the vast, living world of Azeroth beckoned millions, its seeds were sown in the minds of three ambitious college graduates, Michael Morhaime, Alan Adam, and Frank Pierce. In February 1991, they founded a small game development company in Irvine, California, initially named Silicon and Synapse. Their early work included porting games to various platforms and developing original titles like the puzzle platformer The Lost Vikings and the chaotic combat racer Rock N Roll Racing. Even in these projects, a nascent philosophy began to emerge, one that would become the cornerstone of their future success: unwavering dedication to quality, playability, and fun. This approach would later be famously dubbed Blizzard Polish, an almost mythical standard ensuring games were refined, balanced, and bug-free, even if it meant delaying release dates. It was this commitment to excellence that led to a pivotal moment in 1994 with the release of Warcraft, Orcs and Humans. The real-time strategy, RTS, genre was still finding its footing, and Warcraft introduced a compelling fantasy narrative pitting the noble human kingdoms against the invading savage orcish horde. Its intuitive interface, engaging campaign, and groundbreaking multiplayer modes quickly established the company, now renamed Blizzard Entertainment, as a formidable presence in PC gaming. The franchise deepened with Warcraft II, Tides of Darkness in 1995. This sequel expanded the lore dramatically, introducing new units, enhancing graphics, and refining the gameplay even further. The conflict between the Horde and Alliance grew richer, with distinct faction identities and a larger cast of iconic heroes. Warcraft II cemented Blizzard's reputation for crafting immersive fantasy worlds and highly addictive gameplay loops. But it was Warcraft III, Reign of Chaos, released in 2002, that truly bridged the gap between the RTS genre and the grand vision that would become World of Warcraft. Warcraft III blended traditional real-time strategy with strong role-playing elements. Players commanded not just armies, but powerful hero units who gained experience, learned abilities, and collected unique items. The detailed lore explored in its campaign, including the tragic fall of Prince Arthas Menethil, the rise of the Orcish chieftain Thrall, and the introduction of characters like Jaina Proudmoore and Tyrande Whisperwind, provided the immediate narrative predecessor for the MMORPG. Many of the cities, characters, and even specific locations players would later explore in World of Warcraft had their origins firmly planted in the Warcraft III storyline. The world was already rich, vast, and begging for a deeper exploration. It's within this context of RTS domination that the idea for an MMORPG truly took hold within Blizzard. Developers, like many gamers of the era, were captivated by the emerging genre. Games like Sony Online Entertainment's EverQuest, often referred to as Evercrack for its addictive qualities, proved that players were willing to dedicate countless hours to living within a persistent online world. Its deep social systems, challenging content, and sense of true adventure were inspiring. However, entering the MMORPG space was a daunting proposition, even for a company as successful as Blizzard. It was an entirely different beast than developing a single-player or traditional multiplayer RTS. It required massive server infrastructure, constant content updates, and a dedicated team for ongoing maintenance and customer support. There was significant skepticism within the company. Could they really compete with established players in a genre known for its steep learning curves and punishing mechanics? The answer lay in a bold vision: Make an MMORPG that was more accessible, more intuitive, and fundamentally, more fun than anything else on the market. Their internal discussions revolved around the concept of quest-based progression, moving away from the often grindy, aimless leveling experiences prevalent in other MMORPGs. They envisioned a world where players had clear objectives, guided by a compelling narrative, rather than simply killing monsters repeatedly for experience. Crucially, they aimed to reduce the entry barriers that intimidated many potential players. World of Warcraft would feature streamlined character creation, a more forgiving death penalty, you wouldn't lose valuable equipment upon dying, and an art style that, while stylized rather than hyper-realistic, ensured clarity and a timeless appeal. They wanted players to feel comfortable, to quickly grasp the core mechanics, and to be engaged by the game's inherent sense of adventure and discovery. The goal wasn't just to make a grand fantasy world. It was to build one where everyone felt welcome to explore it, whether they were veteran online gamers or entirely new to the concept of a persistent virtual realm. The stage was set for Azeroth to awaken. Forging Azeroth. Development, dreams, and deadlines. With the decision made to plunge into the daunting world of MMORPGs, Blizzard began assembling a team that would lay the very foundations of Azeroth. Key figures emerged, blending deep technical expertise with an unwavering passion for the nascent genre. Rob Pardo, who would become the game's lead designer, envisioned a more streamlined, approachable online world. Shane Gartz spearheaded the engineering efforts, grappling with the monumental task of building scalable server infrastructure. Perhaps most critical was Chris Metzen, the creative director, whose intricate lore had already given depth and texture to the Warcraft RTS games. He was the architect of Azeroth's soul, crafting its narrative, characters, and the epic scope that would captivate millions. Later, a familiar face from the community, Jeff Kaplan, a former guild leader from the rival MMORPG EverQuest, would join the team, bringing invaluable player-centric perspectives that shaped raid design and the overall player experience. The path to creating World of Warcraft was fraught with design challenges that pushed the boundaries of game development at the time. One of the most significant hurdles was simply the scale of the world. Unlike preceding MMORPGs, which often segmented their worlds into discrete zones connected by loading screens, Blizzard sought a truly seamless experience. Players could famously travel from the snowy peaks of Dun Morog to the arid barrens without encountering a single loading screen, a design choice that profoundly enhanced the sense of immersion and discovery. This required innovative streaming technology and careful optimization to keep the vast world feeling responsive. A deliberate artistic choice became another hallmark. Instead of chasing hyper-realistic graphics, which would quickly become outdated, Blizzard opted for a stylized, almost caricatured aesthetic. This choice, sometimes described as Pixar-esque, ensured visual clarity even with hundreds of players on screen, contributed to the game's enduring timelessness, and perfectly complemented the fantastical elements of the Warcraft universe. Every tree, mountain, and creature was imbued with character, lending Azeroth its distinct visual identity. Technological hurdles were equally immense. Building robust server architecture that could reliably handle millions of concurrent players across multiple continents was an unprecedented challenge. Developing efficient netcode to minimize lag and managing the colossal amount of character data. Every item, every spell, every piece of gear, for a rapidly growing player base required constant innovation and problem-solving. This wasn't merely a software project, it was an engineering marvel. At the core of World of Warcraft's gameplay was the holy trinity of combat: tank, healer, and damage dealer. This established a clear dependency between players, encouraging social interaction and teamwork. Each of the initial 9 classes, warrior, paladin, hunter, rogue, priest, shaman, mage, warlock, druid, was meticulously designed to offer a unique playstyle, fantasy, and contribution to group dynamics. The talent tree system, allowing players to customize their characters' abilities and specialization paths, offered deep personalization and engaged players in theorycrafting. The art of optimizing character builds down to the finest detail. Perhaps one of Blizzard's greatest innovations was the overhaul of the questing system. Previous MMORPGs often relied on vague textual descriptions or simply directed players to kill X number of Y without much context. World of Warcraft pioneered the now ubiquitous exclamation mark over a quest giver's head, clearly indicating available quests. It introduced quest hubs, centralized locations where players could pick up multiple quests and efficiently progress through a zone. This design philosophy transformed questing from a tedious chore into an engaging narrative journey, making the game far more welcoming to new players. Throughout its development, the game underwent extensive alpha and beta testing. Thousands of invited players provided invaluable feedback, helping to refine game mechanics, identify bugs, and influence design decisions. Anecdotes from these early testers describe a mixture of awe at the game's vastness and a recognition of its potential, mixed with frustration over early performance issues and unpolished features. The development team paid close attention, actively iterating and adapting based on user experience, embodying the Blizzard Polish mantra even in its nascent stages. Developers shared stories of late nights fueled by pizza and caffeine, driven by the shared vision of creating something truly revolutionary. The pressure was immense, operating under the shadow of Activision, which had acquired Blizzard's parent company, Vivendi Universal Games, in 2008, shortly after WoW's launch. But the prevailing sentiment was one of excitement and belief. They knew they were forging a world that had the potential to define a genre, to capture the imaginations of millions, and to forever change the landscape of online gaming. The countdown to launch began. The gates open, vanilla, the unforeseen phenomenon. When the clock struck midnight on November 23, 2004, the internet braced itself. After years of development and months of intense build-up, World of Warcraft officially launched in North America. The scene that followed was pure, exhilarating chaos. Digital storefronts buckled under the load, servers struggled to accommodate the sudden deluge of eager players, and customer service lines were jammed with frantic calls about installation issues and login errors. For those who managed to navigate the digital bottlenecks, the reward was immediate: entry into a world that felt boundless, alive, and utterly unprecedented. Reports from retailers described lines stretching out the door, harking back to console launches, but this was for a PC game. The initial sales figures were staggering, far exceeding Blizzard's most optimistic predictions. Subscribers flooded in, and within 2 months, World of Warcraft boasted over 1 million active users, a clear signal that something truly special had arrived. This initial era of the game, affectionately dubbed Vanilla WoW by its veteran players, from 2004 to 2007, was defined by a unique set of characteristics that would forever etch themselves into the annals of gaming history. The leveling journey was arduous, a true test of dedication. Reaching the initial level cap of 60 was an investment of hundreds of hours. Quests often required players to trek across vast distances, sometimes deep into enemy territory, with no convenient maps or quest markers telling them exactly where to go. Formidable elite creatures patrolled the pathways, forcing players to remain vigilant and often prompting impromptu partnerships with strangers. It was a world that felt dangerous and, consequently, profoundly rewarding. Every new zone discovered, every quest completed, every level gained felt like a hard-won victory. This inherent difficulty fostered a deeply interconnected community. Unlike modern MMORPGs, where automated grouping tools quickly pair players for dungeons, vanilla WoW often demanded manual effort. To complete a challenging quest or clear a dungeon like the dreaded Ragefare Chasm or the expansive Blackrock Depths, players had to use the general chat channel, shouting LFGUBRS, looking for group upper Blackrock Spire, or patiently whispering potential allies. This organic, sometimes frustrating process of finding a group meant players often ran into the same individuals repeatedly. Reputations were built, friendships forged, and grudges held. Guilds were not just raid teams. They were social anchors, surrogate families that navigated the world together, celebrated successes, and mourned defeats. The game's design practically forced players to interact, creating a palpable sense of shared destiny. At the pinnacle of this social structure lay 40-player raiding. Confronting colossal bosses in epic dungeons like Molten Core, Blackwing Lair, or the infamous Naxxramas required a level of coordination, communication, and commitment that was almost unheard of in gaming. These raids were multi-hour, multi-night endeavors, demanding synchronized movements, precise spell rotations, and meticulous planning. For the dedicated few, achieving a server-first kill of a new boss was akin to winning a championship, providing an enduring sense of accomplishment that bound raid teams together for years. Player versus player, PvP combat was equally impactful. Beyond the structured battlegrounds like Warsong Gulch or Arathi Basin, where teams fought over objectives, the concept of world PvP thrived. Areas like Terran Mill in the Alterac Mountains or the dreaded Blackrock Mountain frequently erupted into massive, unscripted battles as players from the Alliance and Horde clashed, often for no other reason than faction pride. These were chaotic, glorious skirmishes that became legendary in player folklore. The game's economy, driven entirely by players, was another marvel. Crafting professions like tailoring, blacksmithing, and alchemy were vital for progression, and the auction house served as a bustling, dynamic marketplace. Prices fluctuated based on supply, demand, and the whims of enterprising virtual tycoons, creating a vibrant, player-driven ecosystem. The intensity of vanilla WoW also gave rise to some of its most memorable and often unexpected moments, incidents that transcended the game itself and bled into mainstream culture. The Corrupted Blood incident is perhaps the most famous example. In September 2005, a designer accidentally introduced a bug with a debuff from a boss in the Zul'Gurub raid, which acted like a highly contagious plague. Intended to only affect raid participants, the disease spread rapidly in major cities as pets and summoned creatures, themselves infected, returned to population centers. Players witnessed virtual characters dropping dead, vendors afflicted by the sickness, and cries for healers erupting in general chat. Game developers quickly implemented quarantines and eventually patched out the debuff, but the incident drew the attention of real-world epidemiologists. They studied World of Warcraft's digital epidemic as a fascinating case study for real-world pandemic spread, observing player behavior like flight from affected zones, attempts at quarantines, and the altruism of players trying to heal others. Then there was Leary Jenkins. In May 2005, during a guild's attempt to meticulously plan a strategy for a difficult encounter in Upper Blackrock Spire, one player, Leary, apparently distracted and returning late, bellowed his name as he charged headlong into battle. His reckless charge, famously shouting, "LEROYJNKINS," seconds before plunging the group into chaos, resulted in the swift and spectacular annihilation of his entire raid. The video, originally recorded to mock a player's lack of attention, quickly became a global internet meme, recognized even by those who had never touched a video game. It encapsulated the unpredictable nature of online multiplayer and the human element that made World of Warcraft so endlessly entertaining. The Ahn'Qiraj war effort perfectly illustrated the game's capacity for server-wide collaboration. To unlock the ancient city of Ahn'Qiraj, every player on a given server had to contribute resources and participate in a massive war effort. Days, weeks, sometimes months were dedicated to farming specific materials, culminating in a dramatic, server-shattering event where thousands of players gathered to open the gates of Ahn'Qiraj, often grinding servers to a halt. Vanilla WoW resonated deeply because it struck an exquisite balance. It was accessible enough for newcomers to jump in, but deep and challenging enough to reward dedicated players for years. It fundamentally prioritized social interaction, forging a deep sense of community by necessity. Every quest, every boss, every piece of gear felt like a significant achievement, building a powerful sense of progression. And underlying it all was the Blizzard polish, ensuring that even amidst technical growing pains, the core experience was incredibly refined. World of Warcraft was not just a game. It was a phenomenon that captured lightning in a bottle, setting the stage for an online dynasty that would defy all expectations. Burning foundations, scaling new peaks. Fresh off the resounding success of its initial release, Blizzard faced the monumental task of evolving World of Warcraft while retaining its core appeal. Players had conquered the challenges of Azeroth, dispatched countless foes, and explored every corner of the original continents. They craved more. The answer arrived swiftly and spectacularly, not with a whimper, but with the roar of a demon portal ripping through the sky. The Burning Crusade. Released in January 2007, The Burning Crusade, TBC, thrust players through the ominous dark portal into Outland, the shattered remnants of the orc homeworld of Draenor. This expansion was a visual and narrative marvel, transporting players to a truly alien landscape of floating islands, jagged spires, and fel-infused swamps. It raised the level cap from 60 to 70 and introduced two highly anticipated new playable races: the noble Draenei for the Alliance and the blood magic-wielding blood elves for the Horde. These additions finally balanced the faction populations, which had skewed heavily Alliance in many regions, and introduced fresh starting experiences. TBC brought with it several pivotal innovations that would redefine the World of Warcraft experience. Perhaps the most impactful was the introduction of flying mounts to Outland. This feature revolutionized travel, offering breathtaking aerial perspectives of the shattered world and dramatically shortening travel times. While initially restricted to the expansion zones, it hinted at a future where the skies of Azeroth might also be conquered. Arena PvP, a new, structured competitive player-versus-player system, also debuted in TBC. This 2v2, 3v3, and 5v5 battleground mode quickly fueled the nascent flames of World of Warcraft esports, allowing skilled players to compete for ratings and prestigious gear in smaller, more strategic skirmishes. Heroic Dungeons provided a tougher version of existing 5-player instances, catering to players seeking an increased challenge and better rewards before venturing into raids. The raid content in TBC was iconic. From the Gothic Spires of Karajan, a 10-player raid that emphasized storytelling and atmosphere, to the sprawling Serpentrine Cavern and Tempest Keep, TBC's raids offered compelling boss encounters and captivating lore. The expansion culminated in some of WoW's most memorable villains, including the rogue Night Elf Demon Hunter, Illidan Stormridge in the Black Temple, and the final confrontation with Kil'jaeden in Sunwell Plateau. These large-scale encounters cemented TBC's reputation for challenging and rewarding endgame content, solidifying the importance of highly organized raiding guilds. The success of the Burning Crusade was monumental, but it was merely a prelude to the game's undeniable peak. In November 2008, Wrath of the Lich King, WoTLK, launched, pushing World of Warcraft's global subscriber count to an unprecedented 12 million active players. This expansion transported players to the icy continent of Northrend, the domain of the iconic antagonist, Arthas Menethil, the Lich King. He was a character deeply interwoven into Warcraft lore, a tragic hero corrupted into a force of immense evil, and his story resonated profoundly with players, old and new. WoTLK is arguably lauded as Blizzard's strongest narrative expansion. The storytelling was more direct, cinematic, and emotionally potent, focusing on the inevitable confrontation with the Lich King. Northrend itself felt vast and oppressive, a perfect backdrop for the climactic struggle against the Scourge. Innovation continued to thrive. Dual talent specialization allowed players to freely swap between two pre-selected talent configurations, promoting experimentation and flexibility in roles. The achievement system rewarded players for various in-game feats, from exploration to difficult boss kills, adding layers of meta progression. Siege of Wintergrasp introduced a dynamic, large-scale world PvP objective, where hundreds of players could fight for control of a powerful fortress, earning rewards and influencing the zone. Perhaps the most significant mechanical change was the Dungeon Finder, an automated, cross-server grouping tool for 5-player dungeons. While immensely convenient and a boon to accessibility, it sparked heated debate within the community, with some arguing it eroded the organic social interaction that had defined vanilla WoW. Players no longer had to chat or make friends to find a group. They could be instantly teleported into a dungeon with strangers from other servers, often without a word exchanged. WoTLK's raid content remains highly regarded. Players revisited a new, updated Naxxramas from vanilla, delved into the mechanical wonders of Ulduar, often cited as one of WoW's best-designed raids, and finally ascended the frozen spires of Icecrown Citadel for the epic confrontation with Arthas himself. The defeat of the Lich King was a narrative and emotional crescendo, a culmination of years of Warcraft storytelling. Beyond the game itself, Wrath of the Lich King also coincided with World of Warcraft's ultimate pop culture breakthrough. In October 2006, before the expansion's release, the animated television series South Park aired the Emmy award-winning episode, Make Love, Not Warcraft. The episode humorously, yet accurately, depicted the game's addictive qualities, its dedicated community, and the surprising physical toll of prolonged gaming. It cemented World of Warcraft's place in the broader cultural zeitgeist, turning it from a niche gaming phenomenon into a widely recognized, if sometimes misunderstood, cultural touchstone. The game was no longer just for gamers. It was a global talking point. Both the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King solidified World of Warcraft's dominance in the MMORPG genre. They refined the core gameplay loop, pushed the boundaries of content delivery, and consistently set new benchmarks for immersive storytelling and world design. The game, now firmly established, seemed poised for an even brighter future, having conquered its early growing pains and scaled unprecedented heights of popularity. But as the familiar saying goes, the only constant in Azeroth is change. Cataclysm and Crossroads, a shifting world. After the monumental success of Wrath of the Lich King, Blizzard faced a unique challenge: how to follow up arguably the pinnacle of World of Warcraft's narrative and commercial appeal. Their answer, Cataclysm, released in December 2010, was arguably the most ambitious and disruptive expansion to date. Instead of merely adding a new continent, Cataclysm fundamentally reshaped the original continents of Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms. The premise was epic. The corrupted dragon aspect Deathwing, freed from his prison beneath the earth, erupted from the Maelstrom, causing widespread devastation and forever altering the familiar landscapes players had known for 6 years. This grand upheaval meant a complete redesign of the old world. Thousands of quests were rewritten, zones were graphically updated and reformed by volcanic eruptions and tidal waves, and the leveling experience from levels 1 to 60 was given a fresh narrative flow. It was an unprecedented undertaking in the history of MMORPGs, essentially rebuilding half the game. New races, the Goblin, joining the Horde, and the Wurgen cursed humans, joining the Alliance, were introduced, bringing their own unique starting zones and questlines that vividly depicted the Cataclysm's impact. The level cap was raised to 85. Cataclysm brought other significant innovations. Guilds received their own leveling system, earning experience and unlocking perks for members, reinforcing the social backbone of the game. Transmogrification was introduced later in the expansion, allowing players to visually customize their gear by applying the appearance of other owned items. A hugely popular feature that catered to players' desires for aesthetic uniqueness. The reception to Cataclysm was decidedly mixed. Many players praised Blizzard's audacity and the freshness of the revamped old world, thrilled to revisit familiar zones with new storylines. The initial heroic dungeons of Cataclysm were also notoriously challenging, surprising some players who had grown accustomed to the more forgiving difficulty of Wat-Hell-Case heroic instances. However, others lamented the loss of beloved areas or felt nostalgic for the original world structure. The sheer scope of the changes meant that some zones felt rushed or inconsistent, and the ambitious nature of the expansion likely diverted resources from ongoing content updates, contributing to eventual content droughts later in its life cycle. Despite its thematic power, the constant narrative of destruction and the lingering aftermath of Deathwing's fury presented a more somber tone than previous expansions. The subsequent expansion, Mists of Pandaria, MOPI, released in September 2012, felt like a deliberate shift in tone and direction. It was a bold aesthetic and thematic departure, introducing the Asian-inspired continent of Pandaria, an ancient land veiled by mists, and the Pandaren, a race of jovial, martial artist pandas. Initial player reactions were skeptical, with some deriding it as Kung Fu Panda in World of Warcraft. However, as players experienced the expansion, It garnered widespread appreciation for its strong artistic direction, nuanced storytelling, and engaging gameplay. Mists of Pandaria raised the level cap to 90 and introduced the monk, a new martial arts-inspired class that could fill the role of tank, healer, or damage dealer. The narrative of Mopi delved deep into themes of conflict, inner peace, and the consequences of war. It explored the escalating tensions between the Horde and Alliance through the lens of their arrival on this pristine, hitherto unknown continent, culminating in a major faction conflict where players eventually laid siege to Orgrimmar, the Horde capital, to depose the corrupted warchief Garrosh Hellscream. Mopi also refined several game systems. Pet Battles, a popular new minigame akin to a turn-based collectible monster game, became an unexpected hit, providing a casual, engaging side activity. Challenge modes for dungeons offered timed runs with score-based rewards, promoting competitive 5-player content. A flexible raid sizing system was introduced for the normal difficulty, allowing guilds to adjust their raid size between 10 and 25 players without penalty, a major quality-of-life improvement for guild organization. Despite its critical success and player enjoyment, Mists of Pandaria continued to see a slow but steady decline in subscriber numbers, a trend that began after Wat Helke's peak. While still drawing millions of players, the decline signaled a maturing player base, increased competition from other online gaming titles, and perhaps a general fatigue for the MMORPG genre after nearly a decade of dominance. The days of exponential growth were over, replaced by the reality of retaining an established, but ever-evolving, audience. Blizzard was at a crossroads, navigating a shifting gaming landscape while trying to keep Azeroth fresh and relevant. Dreener's Detour and Legion's Legacy, Rebuilding Trust. Following the philosophical nuances of Mists of Pandaria, Blizzard looked to recapture the raw, gritty essence of Warcraft's origins with Warlords of Dreener, WoD. Released in November 2014. The premise was a tantalizing one, a journey back in time to an alternate, uncorrupted past of Dreener, the Orc homeworld, before it became the Shattered Outland. Players were tasked with confronting the Iron Horde, a formidable army of orcs united under Grommash Hellscream's leadership, determined to prevent their timeline's descent into demonic corruption and launch an invasion of Azeroth. The level cap was increased to 100. Warlords of Dreener introduced the Garrison, a personal player-controlled base that promised flexible content and a customizable hub for characters. It offered progression paths for followers, crafting, and mission tables. A new raid difficulty, Mythic, was added, creating an even higher tier of challenge for the game's most dedicated raiding guilds, focusing solely on a fixed 20-player size. The expansion also provided a level 90 character boost, allowing new or returning players to immediately jump into the new content. WoD saw exceptional initial sales, demonstrating the enduring power of Warcraft's brand and the hype generated by the promise of a darker, grittier story. However, this early enthusiasm quickly faded. The Garrison, while initially exciting, became a source of significant player isolation, reducing the organic social interaction that had long been a hallmark of World of Warcraft. Players no longer needed to gather in city hubs for crafting or auction house activities. They could do much of it from their personal garrison, leading to a noticeable reduction in world activity. More critically, Warlords of Dreener was plagued by an extreme content drought following its launch. Patches and new features were delayed or canceled, leading to widespread player frustration and a dramatic, sustained fall in subscription numbers, reaching a nadir previously unseen in WoW's history. Despite a promising concept, WoD proved to be a difficult period for the game and its community. Recognizing the need for a triumphant return to form, Blizzard poured considerable resources and expertise into Legion, which launched in September 2016. It was a clear statement of intent to revitalize the game and win back a disillusioned player base. The narrative returned to the existential threat posed by the Burning Legion, the demonic forces that had long plagued Azeroth, and focused on a grand defensive war. The level cap was raised to 110, and a new heroic class, the Demon Hunter, inspired by Illidan Stormridge, made its highly anticipated debut. Legion was widely hailed as a monumental success. It learned from WoD's mistakes, delivering a consistent stream of engaging content, often with shorter intervals between patches. The cornerstone of the expansion was the artifact weapon system. Each specialization received a unique, lore-rich weapon that players upgraded throughout the entire expansion, providing a powerful sense of character progression and immersion. This system, while later criticized as a form of borrowed power, meaning the power was temporary and removed at the end of the expansion, was immensely satisfying at the time. Perhaps the most impactful innovation was the introduction of Mythic Plus dungeons. This system provided endlessly repeatable, scalable 5-player content that grew in difficulty and reward, complete with a timer and affixes, additional mechanics, that changed weekly. Mythic Plus revitalized dungeon content, creating a vibrant competitive scene around 5-player groups, complete with its own professional esports circuit, the Mythic Dungeon International, MDI. Legion also introduced a far more dynamic daily content system with world quests, which provided a diverse array of objectives across the Broken Isles, ensuring players always had something meaningful to do. Class order halls, unique hubs for each class, provided flavor and class-specific progression. Legion's reception was overwhelmingly positive. It successfully addressed player concerns about content droughts, offered compelling gameplay loops, and featured strong raid and dungeon design. The story was engaging, tying directly into much-loved lore while providing new twists. Both critically and commercially, Legion was a powerhouse, successfully revitalizing the game's subscriber numbers and player engagement. It was a testament to Blizzard's ability to listen to feedback, learn from past missteps, and deliver a consistently high-quality experience. The trust, so diminished during Warlords of Draenor, was largely rebuilt, setting the stage for what many hoped would be a sustained period of resurgence for World of Warcraft. The modern warfront, Battle for Azeroth, Shadowlands, and Dragonflight. Having successfully recaptured much of its player base with Legion, Blizzard launched its next major expansion, Battle for Azeroth, BFA, in August 2018. If Legion was about fighting a common enemy, BFA marked a deliberate return to the roots of the Warcraft universe. The escalating, bitter conflict between the Alliance and the Horde. The level cap was raised to 120, and new continents, Kul Tiras for the Alliance and Zandalar for the Horde, offered diverse landscapes and intricate lore. The central narrative revolved around the escalating faction war, driven significantly by the cunning and morally ambiguous warchief Sylvanas Windrunner. Her actions, including the burning of the Night Elf capital Teldrassil, set a grim tone for the expansion, dividing the player community not just in-game between factions, but also out of game over the controversial direction of the story. New gameplay features included island expeditions, 3-player scenarios to collect Azerite, and warfronts, large-scale PvE battles reminiscent of classic RTS gameplay. However, the core borrowed power system for BFA, the Heart of Azeroth amulet that powered Azerite armor, was poorly received. It often felt grindy, unrewarding, and offered limited customization, drawing significant criticism from players who felt a lack of meaningful progression. Despite its engaging zones and some well-designed raids, BFA suffered from this flawed system and a story that alienated a portion of its player base. Nevertheless, the game's competitive esports scene, particularly the Mythic Dungeon International, MDI, and Arena World Championship, AWC, continued to grow in prominence and viewership. The next chapter in World of Warcraft's saga opened with Shadowlands, which launched in November 2020. This expansion took players to an entirely new, cosmic realm, the afterlife of Azeroth. The narrative premise was grand. Sylvanas Windrunner had torn a hole in the veil between life and death, disrupting the natural order and draining souls into a hellish maw. Players journeyed to 4 distinct realms within the Shadowlands: Bastion, Maldraxxus, Ardenweald, and Revendreth, each ruled by a powerful covenant. Shadowlands introduced covenants as its primary player choice system. Players pledged allegiance to one of the 4 covenants, unlocking unique abilities, cosmetic rewards, and distinct storyline paths. While intended to offer meaningful choice, the system proved divisive. Many players felt compelled to choose the meta covenant, the one offering optimal performance for their class spec, rather than the one they found most appealing narratively, leading to a sense of restricted player agency. Torghast, Tower of the Damned, a roguelike-inspired, infinitely scaling dungeon, offered a new avenue for character power and legendary crafting materials, but it became repetitive for many over time. The expansion notably launched during the height of the global COVID-19 pandemic, which significantly impacted player engagement patterns, with a surge in initial players seeking escape, followed by a decline as real-world circumstances shifted. More profoundly, Shadowlands' development and its life cycle were unfortunately overshadowed by a series of major scandals that came to light regarding Activision Blizzard's workplace culture, including allegations of harassment and discrimination. These revelations significantly impacted public perception of the company and the game, contributing to a sense of internal turmoil. After the mixed receptions of BFA and the difficult circumstances surrounding Shadowlands, Dragonflight, released in November 2022, was a conscious attempt by Blizzard to return to World of Warcraft's foundational strengths: exploration, adventure, and a sense of wonder. The expansion refocused on the dragons of Azeroth, opening up the ancient and mysterious Dragon Isles, a land untouched for 10 millennia. Blizzard deliberately scaled back complex, borrowed power systems, opting instead for evergreen content and quality-of-life improvements. The level cap was increased to 70, and a new hybrid evoker class, a dragon humanoid Drakthar, was introduced, capable of both ranged damage and healing. The reception for Dragonflight was overwhelmingly positive. A major highlight was dragon riding, a highly praised new aerial movement system that provided unparalleled freedom and speed, allowing players to perform acrobatic maneuvers on their personalized dragon mounts. It transformed traversal from a passive activity into an engaging skill-based one. The core talent tree system underwent a comprehensive overhaul, returning to a more expansive, classic-style tree that offered players greater customization and choice than previous iterations. Professions received a significant revamp, making crafting and gathering more engaging and impactful. Critically, Blizzard demonstrated a renewed commitment to listening to player feedback, implementing changes rapidly and transparently, fostering a sense of trust and collaboration with its community. Dragonflight was seen as a much-needed breath of fresh air, a joyous and optimistic return to core Warcraft values that hinted at a promising future. Looking ahead, Blizzard has signaled its long-term commitment to the game with the ambitious announcement of the World Soul Saga, a multi-expansion narrative arc beginning with The War Within and continuing with Midnight and The Last Titan. This declaration of a planned saga, akin to a multi-season television series, underscores Blizzard's enduring belief in World of Warcraft's potential. After nearly 2 decades, the game continues to evolve, adapting to player feedback and market trends, striving to recapture the magic that first captivated millions so many years ago. The modern Warfront is a battle not just within Azeroth, but also for its continued relevance and place in the hearts of gamers worldwide. The fabric of Azeroth: lore, narratives, and world building. At the very heart of World of Warcraft's enduring appeal lies a universe so vast and intricately detailed that it rivals the most established fantasy sagas. What began as a relatively straightforward conflict between orcs and humans in a real-time strategy game blossomed into a sprawling mythology, meticulously crafted across RTS manuals, novels, comic books, animated shorts, and, crucially, through the immersive in-game experience itself. This rich tapestry of lore is the beating heart of Azeroth, giving context to every quest, every character, and every conflict. Central to this universe are its iconic factions, the Noble Alliance and the Resilient Horde. The Alliance, primarily composed of humans, dwarves, night elves, gnomes, Wurgen, and Draenei, often embodies ideals of justice, order, and tradition. Their champions, figures like the courageous Jaina Proudmoore, the steadfast Muradin Bronzebeard, and the recently matured King Anduin Wrynn, represent a legacy of defending civilization against encroaching threats. In contrast, the Horde, comprised of orcs, tauren, trolls, undead, forsaken, blood elves, and goblins, forges a different path. Often driven by survival, honor, and a fierce independence, their heroes, like the pragmatic Thrall, the cunning Sylvanas Windrunner, whose journey has been particularly tumultuous, and the wise Bane Bloodhoof represent a collection of outcasts who found strength in unity. The eternal dance between these two factions, sometimes aligned against a greater evil, sometimes locked in brutal conflict, forms the bedrock of much of Azeroth's history. Beyond the factional divide, Azeroth has faced, and continues to face, truly cosmic threats that test the very fabric of existence. The Burning Legion, a demonic army led by the fallen Titan Sargeras, has been a persistent, universe-threatening menace from the earliest Warcraft games, repeatedly attempting to corrupt and destroy all life. The Dread Scourge, an army of undead commanded by the Lich King, represented a cold, relentless terror. Deeper still are the old gods, ancient, malevolent entities of immense power, whispering madness from the depths of the world, whose influence permeates the very soil and whispers into the minds of mortals. And then there are the elemental lords, primal forces of nature vying for dominance, and myriad lesser threats that constantly keep Azeroth on the brink. The vast narrative arcs of World of Warcraft revolve around uniting against these existential threats, only to see the fragile peace shattered by renewed factional hostilities, a cyclical pattern that underscores the inherent struggles within the world. The storytelling methods employed within World of Warcraft have evolved dramatically over its nearly 20-year lifespan. In its early days, much of the lore was delivered through quest text, simple blocks of writing that players would often skim. Lore books and environmental storytelling, subtly hinting at past events through ruins or monuments, filled in the gaps. Over time, as technology advanced, so did the narrative delivery. Voice acting became commonplace for key characters and quest givers, bringing personalities to life. Pre-rendered cinematics, increasingly sophisticated and emotionally resonant, served as major narrative beats, providing context for epic battles or revealing climactic confrontations. Dynamic in-game events, where changes to the world occurred live and in real time, immersed players directly in the unfolding drama. This continuous push to deliver story more vividly attempts to balance the highly linear nature of traditional narrative with the non-linear, player-driven freedom inherent to an MMORPG. The challenge lies in allowing players agency within the world while still guiding them through a coherent, overarching storyline. This has occasionally led to retcons, where established lore is altered to accommodate new plotlines, a practice that always sparks lively debate among the game's dedicated lore community. Indeed, the community itself plays a vital role in keeping Azeroth's lore alive and thriving. The passion for Warcraft's history goes far beyond casual interest. Millions scour quest text, analyze cinematics frame by frame, and pore over character dialogues to piece together timelines and theories. Dedicated lore masters create intricate fan wikis like WoW Wiki and Wowhead, exhaustive databases that catalog every character, event, and item. Role-playing servers provide a space for players to embody characters and create their own stories within the established universe, adding another layer of depth to the collective narrative. Debates rage on forums and theory crafting videos dissect every new piece of information, demonstrating a level of engagement usually reserved for multi-season television shows or literary series. Ultimately, the rich and ever-expanding fabric of Azeroth's lore is an indispensable reason for World of Warcraft's enduring appeal. It creates a world that feels truly alive, a place where history, heroes, and villains aren't just background noise, but integral parts of an ongoing saga that players themselves can influence. It provides the meaning behind the grind, the purpose behind the battle, and the emotional connection that transforms pixels into a profound, shared experience. Game systems, the evolving playbook of Azeroth. Beyond its captivating lore and vibrant communities, World of Warcraft's enduring success is fundamentally rooted in its game systems. The intricate mechanics that govern how players interact with the world, with each other, and with the challenges presented to them. These systems have been continuously refined, redesigned, and, at times, radically overhauled over nearly 2 decades, reflecting shifts in player expectations, technological capabilities, and Blizzard's evolving design philosophies. The journey of questing illustrates this evolution perfectly. In vanilla WoW, quests were often terse, delivered through blocks of text, requiring players to read carefully and explore thoroughly to find their objectives. Sometimes, finding the quest area itself was a puzzle. This fostered a sense of discovery and exploration. Over the years, questing became more streamlined. The iconic exclamation mark above a quest giver's head and the question mark for completion on the minimap made objectives far clearer. Voice acting became prevalent, adding personality and immediate context. By Legion and subsequent expansions, quests could involve intricate cinematic moments, dynamic environmental shifts, and multi-stage storylines that felt more like interactive narratives than simple fetch quests. While some veterans mourned the loss of the old-world obscurity, these changes made the game significantly more accessible and enjoyable for a broader audience. Dungeons and raids have always been the cooperative heart of World of Warcraft. The foundational Holy Trinity, tank to absorb damage, healer to keep everyone alive, and damage dealers to dispatch enemies, has remained remarkably consistent throughout the game's history. What changed was scale and accessibility. Vanilla dungeons were often lengthy and required significant time commitment, while 40-player raids like Molten Core demanded meticulously organized guilds. Over time, Blizzard introduced more flexibility. 10 and 25-player formats became standard, and then flexible raid sizing allowed player groups to range from 10 to 30. The Raid Finder (LFR) difficulty, introduced in Cataclysm, allowed even the most casual players to experience raid content through an automated queue, albeit with less challenge and often less social interaction. A major game-changer came with Legion's Mythic Plus dungeons. This system recycled existing 5-player dungeons, adding layers of difficulty, keys, and weekly changing modifiers, affixes, that scaled infinitely. Mythic Plus transformed dungeon running into a highly competitive and replayable endgame activity, creating its own thriving esports scene and providing a constant source of challenge for players who preferred smaller group content over large-scale raids. It revolutionized how players conceptualize endgame progression. Player versus player, PvP, combat has also seen multiple iterations. Early world PvP was chaotic and organic, with spontaneous battles erupting in contested zones like the Crossroads. Structured battlegrounds, such as Arathi Basin and Warsong Gulch, provided objective-based team combat. The Burning Crusade introduced the arena system, a true competitive mode for small teams, 2v2, 3v3, 5v5, which quickly gained traction as the game's primary esports arena for PvP. Over time, Blizzard introduced rating systems to match players of similar skill and provided specific gear sets for PvP combat. The contentious War Mode was added in battle for Azeroth, allowing players to opt into World PvP for bonus rewards, a compromise between the old-world free-for-all and modern structured play. The professions and economy systems underscored the living world aspect of Azeroth. In the early days, professions like blacksmithing or tailoring were crucial for acquiring pre-raid gear, making crafters and material gatherers invaluable. The auction house, a player-driven marketplace, reflected a genuine supply and demand economy. Prices for rare materials or desirable gear could fluctuate wildly, with savvy players mastering the art of virtual arbitrage. This also led to issues like gold farming, often by third-party companies employing low-wage workers, and the selling of gold for real money, which Blizzard consistently fought against. Their ultimate solution, the WoW token, allowed players to buy game time with gold or sell gold for real money through a Blizzard-controlled system, bringing a once-illicit market legitimized and in-house. Class and talent design has been a constant balancing act. Vanilla's expansive talent trees offered deep customization, but could also be overwhelming or lead to dead builds. Over the years, these evolved into more streamlined specialization choices with fewer talent points. Then into the borrowed power systems of Legion, Battle for Azeroth, and Shadowlands, artifact weapons, Azerite gear, covenants, which provided powerful temporary character progression tied to each expansion. While these systems offered unique gameplay, they were often criticized for feeling temporary and creating a reset with each new expansion. Dragonflight responded to this criticism by revitalizing the more traditional, expansive talent trees, allowing for greater player choice and evergreen customization that persists beyond a single expansion. Finally, a host of quality-of-life improvements, CoL, have significantly shaped the player experience. Features like dual specialization, allowing players to swap between two talent configurations, account-wide mount and pet collections, transmogrification, applying cosmetic appearances to gear, and automated group finders have made the game far more convenient and user-friendly. While these changes undeniably improved accessibility and reduced tedium, some longtime players argued they diminished the social necessity of the game, the need to organically meet other players to form groups or to show off unique gear, a common tension between modern convenience and the game's social roots. The evolution of World of Warcraft's game systems is a microcosm of the entire title, a continuous cycle of innovation, adaptation, and refinement. Each change, whether celebrated or controversial, has contributed to the enduring playbook that governs Azeroth, ensuring that a near 20-year-old game continues to offer fresh experiences while retaining the core elements that first captivated millions. The human element, communities, guilds, and connections. More than the meticulously crafted lore or the evolving game systems, the true heart of World of Warcraft has always been its players. The game, by its very design, fostered a unique environment for social interaction, forging connections that often transcended the digital realm and touched real lives. At the core of this vast social organism was the guild. Guilds were far more than just groups of players gathered to defeat raid bosses or conquer battlegrounds. They functioned as surrogate families, a source of guidance for new players, a fountain of specialized knowledge, and often a vital support system. In the early days, before cross-realm functionality, guild members were truly your neighbors. Their reputation within the server directly impacted yours. Stories abound of long-standing guilds, some lasting over a decade, their members aging together, celebrating births and marriages, and mourning losses. These communities developed their own internal cultures, from highly competitive, tightly wound raiding machines to casual social clubs centered around silly in-game events or simply chatting. The dedication of guild leaders and officers, who often volunteered countless hours of their personal time to recruitment, organization, and mediating internal dramas, was the unsung backbone of these online societies. This sustained proximity and shared experience in a virtual world led to surprisingly deep and lasting friendships and relationships. It wasn't uncommon for players to spend more time communicating with their guildmates than with their real-life friends or family, particularly during intense raiding periods. As mentioned in the prologue, countless real-life marriages have been directly attributed to connections made within World of Warcraft. Friends forged through late-night dungeon delves or epic PvP battles would organize real-life meetups, traveling across continents to finally put a face to the voice and pixels they cherished. Many players have recounted invaluable emotional support received from their in-game communities during periods of job loss, illness in the family, or personal struggles, demonstrating how these virtual bonds could translate into tangible real-world comfort and assistance. However, like any large human gathering, the World of Warcraft community also had its darker side. The anonymity of the internet, coupled with the competitive nature of the game, could sometimes bring out the worst in people. Toxicity was and remains a persistent challenge. Harassment, verbal abuse, cyberbullying, and griefing, intentionally annoying or disrupting other players' experience, were unfortunately common occurrences. Blizzard, like many online game developers, constantly grappled with effective moderation, balancing freedom of expression with the need to protect players from harmful behavior. For some, the game also presented risks of addiction. While a complex psychological phenomenon, anecdotal evidence, and some studies highlighted cases where excessive play led to neglecting real-life responsibilities, health issues, or social isolation outside the game. These were serious concerns that required careful balancing by both players and developers. A significant, if often unseen, negative aspect was the prevalence of gold farming and selling. Players in lower-wage economies, often exploited by companies, would toil endlessly in the game to harvest gold and rare items, which would then be sold to players in wealthier nations for real-world currency. This illicit economy corrupted the in-game market, created frustrating competition for resources, and, more importantly, raised ethical questions about exploitative labor practices. Conversely, the community often exhibited strong elements of community self-regulation. In the early days, server reputations mattered. A player or a guild known for bad behavior might find themselves ostracized or unable to find groups. Players created their own chat channels for specific purposes, fostering a sense of localized community. The very necessity of cooperation in early WoW often meant that players had to, at minimum, learn to tolerate and work with each other. With the advent of esports and content creation, a new hierarchy emerged within the community. Professional arena players and Mythic Plus teams garnered celebrity status, competing for significant prize pools. Streamers and YouTubers, showcasing their gameplay, personality, or specialized knowledge, became new community leaders, often serving as primary sources of game information and entertainment. This phenomenon also gave rise to an entire subculture of theorycrafters, highly analytical players who delve into statistics and game mechanics to optimize performance, and extensive fan-made databases and guides on sites like Wowhead and Icy Veins, which are invaluable resources for millions of players. Ultimately, the collective experience is what made World of Warcraft special. The shared triumphs of server-first achievements, the camaraderie forged in late-night raid wipes, the quiet moments of exploration side by side with a stranger in a vast virtual wilderness. These moments built a collective identity. Despite its immense size and diverse player base, a unique spirit of the World of Warcraft community formed, one capable of both intense competition and profound connection, making it far more than just lines of code. It became a living, breathing tapestry of human interaction. Beyond the screen, cultural footprint and real-world impact, World of Warcraft's influence extends far beyond the confines of digital servers and gaming communities. It became a cultural touchstone, seeping into the lexicon of everyday conversation, inspiring art, and even providing an unforeseen laboratory for real-world scientific study. Its pervasive presence cemented it as a truly global phenomenon, demonstrating the profound capacity of a video game to impact broader society. Perhaps the most potent example of its mainstream pop culture penetration came in October 2006, with the South Park episode, Make Love, Not Warcraft. This Emmy-winning episode hilariously, yet accurately, depicted the game's immersive qualities, its unique social dynamics, and the intense dedication of its players. The portrayal of four young boys battling a rogue, griefing player in WoW, and eventually saving the world, both virtual and real, resonated deeply with gamers while simultaneously introducing millions of non-gamers to the peculiarities of online gaming culture. The episode became instantly iconic, and phrases like, "You can't just hack and slash your way through level grinding," entered the mainstream lexicon. Other television shows, movies, and even musical artists have referenced World of Warcraft, solidifying its presence as a widely recognized cultural artifact. Beyond structured media, World of Warcraft was a fertile ground for internet memes and viral moments. The Leary Jenkins video, as discussed, is perhaps the quintessential example, an accidental piece of gaming comedy that transcended its origins to become recognizable far beyond the gaming sphere. But there were countless others. The ubiquitous Chuck Norris facts that often reference the game, the incessant chat spamming of Anal Thunderfury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, a famous joke involving a legendary sword's chat link, and iconic in-game quotes used out of context, all became part of the broader internet folklore. These moments showcase the game's ability to generate its own self-referential culture that flourished and spread across the burgeoning web. Remarkably, World of Warcraft also provided a unique, unplanned laboratory for real-world analogies and scientific studies. The corrupted blood incident stands as the most prominent example. The accidental spread of a highly virulent debuff inadvertently simulated a real-world epidemic, affecting millions of virtual lives. Epidemiologists, public health officials, and disease modelers meticulously studied its patterns of infection, spread, and player-instigated quarantines and flight behaviors. Their findings offered valuable insights into human responses to pandemics, providing a digital mirror to real-world crises. Beyond epidemiology, sociologists, psychologists, and economists found fertile ground for research within Azeroth. Studies explored the formation of online identities, the emergence of leaders within virtual communities, the dynamics of group cohesion in persistent online environments, and the concept of social capital, built through online interaction. Economists analyzed World of Warcraft's in-game economy as a closed system, studying inflation, the dynamics of virtual currencies, and the impact of player-driven markets. The auction house, in particular, provided a wealth of data for studying supply and demand in real time. World of Warcraft also unexpectedly became a vehicle for charity and philanthropy. Blizzard Entertainment launched initiatives like the sale of special in-game pets, such as the Pandarin Monk, Argy, or Brightpaw, with a significant portion of the proceeds donated to real-world charities like Make-A-Wish and Doctors Without Borders. These campaigns collectively raised millions of dollars, demonstrating the powerful collective generosity of the player base. Beyond official efforts, players themselves organized countless in-game or community-driven fundraisers and support systems for individuals or causes in need, highlighting the altruistic potential of its tightly knit communities. Finally, World of Warcraft's most pervasive impact has been on the gaming industry itself. It didn't just popularize the MMORPG genre, it professionalized it. Its success elevated the expectations for online games, setting new benchmarks for continuous content delivery, live service updates, and community management. Developers in its wake sought to emulate its success, learning from its design innovations in questing, raiding, and social systems. It proved that a subscription model, backed by consistent quality and community engagement, could create an enduring product. Almost every major online game released since WoW's heyday bears some trace of its influence, whether in its quest design, social features, or approach to iterative development. In essence, World of Warcraft transcended its category to become a cultural phenomenon. It reshaped perceptions of what a game could be, proving that digital worlds could foster genuine communities, generate meaningful experiences, and even offer insights into the complexities of human behavior. Its footprint extends far beyond the computer screen, making it an indelible part of 21st-century popular culture and a pivotal chapter in the history of interactive entertainment. The business of worlds. Blizzard, capitalism, and creativity. Beneath the epic tales of heroes and villains, the intricate dance of lore, and the vibrant tapestry of its community, World of Warcraft is, at its core, a multi-billion-dollar business. Its commercial model, once revolutionary, has evolved dramatically over its two-decade lifespan, reflecting broader shifts in the gaming industry and the relentless pursuit of profitability. From its inception, World of Warcraft was built on a subscription model. Players paid a monthly fee, typically around $15 to access the game's servers. This was a deliberate and then novel business strategy. Unlike traditional games bought once, the subscription model was justified by Blizzard as necessary to fund constant content updates, maintain the vast server infrastructure, provide 24/7 customer service, and ensure a seamless online experience. It represented a commitment from both the developer to perpetual development and from the player to ongoing engagement. For years, this model was immensely successful, providing a consistent, predictable revenue stream that few other games could boast. At its peak, with 12 million subscribers, World of Warcraft was generating hundreds of millions of dollars annually from subscriptions alone, not counting expansion pack sales. A pivotal moment in World of Warcraft's business trajectory, and indeed for Blizzard Entertainment itself, was the Activision-Blizzard merger in 2008. Vivendi Games, Blizzard's then-parent company, merged with Activision to form Activision Blizzard. While Blizzard often maintained a degree of operational autonomy, this merger undoubtedly brought heightened pressure for consistent financial performance and quarterly earnings reports. The Blizzard Polish philosophy, which often allowed for extensive development cycles and delayed releases for the sake of quality, came under scrutiny as the demands of a publicly traded entertainment giant asserted themselves. This shift inevitably influenced development priorities, sometimes pushing for faster content delivery over meticulous refinement. As the industry shifted, so did World of Warcraft's monetization strategy. While expansion sales remained major revenue spikes, providing players with vast new continents, levels, and features, Blizzard began to explore other avenues. Microtransactions were introduced, cautiously at first, then more broadly. Players could purchase unique in-game mounts, companion pets, and cosmetic items directly from an online store. Character services like server transfers, faction changes, and race changes offered convenience for a fee. Later, level boosts were introduced, allowing players to instantly experience new expansion content without the extensive leveling journey. These revenue streams capitalized on player demand for customization, convenience, and skipping repetitive content, supplementing the subscription income. Perhaps the most ingenious and controversial addition was the WoW token. Introduced in 2015, the WoW token allowed players to buy a token for real money, around $20 USD, and sell it on the in-game auction house for gold. Conversely, players with excess gold could buy a token from the auction house and redeem it for 30 days of game time. This effectively created a Blizzard-sanctioned way to buy gold with real money and, more significantly, to pay for one's subscription entirely with in-game gold if they were diligent enough to earn it. The WoW token legitimized and formalized a gray market that had previously thrived in the shadows, recapturing lost revenue from illicit gold sellers and creating an ingenious feedback loop where Blizzard profitized both ends of the transaction. It also greatly impacted the in-game economy, with the value of gold becoming tied to a real-world monetary equivalent. World of Warcraft's enduring financial success has also been shaped by the ever-intensifying competition and market changes. While it once stood almost alone in the MMORPG space, rivals such as Guild Wars, Final Fantasy XIV, The Elder Scrolls Online, and Star Wars, the Old Republic emerged, each vying for a piece of the genre's pie. More broadly, the gaming market diversified rapidly with the explosion of new genres like MOBAs, League of Legends, Dota 2, Battle Royale games, Fortnite, PUBG, and the rapid expansion of mobile gaming. These competitors sometimes offered free-to-play models or different pricing structures, putting pressure on WoW's traditional subscription. Despite these challenges, World of Warcraft has remained a consistent, significant revenue generator for Activision Blizzard. Its enduring loyalty from a massive, dedicated player base, even if subscriber numbers have fluctuated over the years, provides a remarkably stable foundation. The game's long-standing profitability underscores how a well-executed live service model, continually offering new content and experiences, can create extraordinary long-term value. The business of Azeroth is a complex interplay of creative vision, player engagement, and savvy financial strategy, a testament to its unique place in the intersection of digital entertainment and global capitalism. Trials and triumphs, controversies, challenges, and lessons learned. No journey spanning nearly 2 decades is without its bumps, detours, and outright crashes. For World of Warcraft, its illustrious history is also punctuated by significant controversies, technical frustrations, and moments of profound player discontent. Examining these challenges is crucial to understanding the game's evolution, Blizzard's development processes, and the resilient bond between developers and their audience. From its chaotic launch, server stability and infrastructure have been a recurring pain point for World of Warcraft. Initial launch days were infamous for massive login queues, server crashes, and connectivity issues as millions tried to enter the game simultaneously. While the initial growing pains were eventually smoothed over, various incidents punctuated the years that followed. Major server outages, particularly during peak times after new content releases, and even targeted distributed denial-of-service (DDoS) attacks that brought the game to its knees. The sheer technical challenge of maintaining, operating, and scaling a game that at one point served 12 million concurrent players across the globe, with low latency, was immense. Blizzard continually invested in infrastructure and technology, but the frustration of being unable to play remained a constant source of player ire. Perhaps the most consistent source of player discontent has been content droughts. While every live service game struggles with pacing, World of Warcraft's history is replete with periods where players felt there simply wasn't enough new content to keep them engaged between major patches or expansions. Warlords of Draenor, in particular, became synonymous with content drought, contributing heavily to its rapid subscriber decline even after a strong launch. The feast or famine cycle, where players consume new content rapidly, then find little to do before the next major update, became a predictable, if frustrating, rhythm. Blizzard continually experimented with addressing this, introducing more replayable systems like Mythic Plus, World Quests, and time-walking dungeons to provide evergreen content beyond the initial questing and raiding experience. Development philosophy shifts often sparked intense debates within the player base. The repeated introduction of borrowed power systems, like Legion's artifact weapons, Battle for Azeroth's Azerite armor, or Shadowlands covenants and conduits, became a major point of contention. While intended to provide new progression paths, players often felt these systems were too temporary, too grindy, or too restrictive, leading to a frustrating reset of power and progression with each new expansion. The constant tension between designing for the casual player, who might be overwhelmed by complexity, and the hardcore raider PvPer, who craves depth and challenge, also fueled ongoing debate, as did the balance between data-driven design, using analytics to inform decisions, and creative, vision-driven design. However, the most severe and public challenge to Blizzard, and by extension, World of Warcraft, came to light in the summer of 2021 with the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing (DFEH) lawsuit. The lawsuit detailed a litany of allegations against Activision Blizzard regarding systemic workplace harassment, discrimination, and a toxic, frat boy culture, particularly impacting women employees. These revelations, corroborated by numerous employee accounts and investigative journalism, sent shockwaves through the gaming industry and deeply impacted players' perception of the company that created their beloved game. Employee walkouts, public protests, and a significant backlash from the community forced Activision Blizzard to address the issues. While the legal battles and internal reforms are ongoing, the scandal led to leadership changes, promises of cultural overhaul, and a visible shift in how Blizzard communicated with its player base, becoming more transparent and responsive. This period exposed the difficult reality that the games players loved were created within a human organization, susceptible to the same failings as any other workplace. Despite these significant speed bumps and controversies, World of Warcraft has consistently demonstrated a remarkable capacity for resilience and adaptation. The lessons learned from past mistakes, though sometimes painfully acquired, often led to vital improvements. The success of Dragonflight, for instance, was directly linked to Blizzard's stated focus on avoiding previous, borrowed power pitfalls and fostering a more positive internal and external communication strategy, directly responding to player feedback from previous expansions and the company's internal struggles. The enduring success of World of Warcraft is not just a triumph of game design, but a testament to its ability to weather storms, integrate feedback, and continually reinvent itself. The controversies highlight the intense scrutiny that comes with being a gaming giant and the profound emotional investment players have in the virtual worlds they inhabit. But they also underscore the persistent drive within Blizzard to overcome these challenges, demonstrating that even a 2-decade-old behemoth can still learn, grow, and strive for new heights. The long journey ahead. Azeroth's enduring legacy and future. Nearly 20 years and almost a dozen expansions since its revolutionary launch, World of Warcraft stands as a titan in the gaming world, a living testament to the power of persistent virtual worlds. Its enduring appeal is multifaceted, woven from threads of nostalgia, profound community bonds, constant evolution, and the comforting allure of returning to a familiar, yet ever-changing, second home. Millions of players, myself included, have found themselves drawn back to Azeroth time and again, even after long hiatuses, a phenomenon few other online games can boast. Part of World of Warcraft's remarkable longevity lies in its unparalleled ability to reinvent itself while retaining its core identity. While the mainline game, often referred to as Retail WoW, has continually iterated, streamlined, and expanded, a powerful, unexpected phenomenon emerged: World of Warcraft Classic. Launched in 2019, Classic was a response to years of player requests for a return to the game's original, pre-expansion state. Its immediate, overwhelming success, drawing millions of concurrent players and briefly eclipsing even Retail WoW in viewership, was a revelation. Classic proved that beyond updated graphics and quality-of-life improvements, players deeply longed for the slower pace, the emphasis on social interdependence, the more arduous journey, and the dense, less explicit quest mechanics of the original game. It was a powerful vindication of the original design philosophies and a stark reminder that what some considered inconveniences were, for others, essential components of a richer, more connective experience. The subsequent re-releases of the Burning, Crusade Classic, and Wrath of the Lich King Classic, along with experimental, seasonal, realms like Season of Mastery, Hardcore, and Season of Discovery, demonstrated that World of Warcraft had effectively created two parallel, thriving universes, catering to different but equally passionate player bases. For mainline World of Warcraft ***, the recent Dragonflight expansion marked a crucial turning point. After the controversies and mixed receptions of the preceding expansions, Dragonflight was a conscious effort by Blizzard to steer the ship back towards fundamental principles, focusing on exploration, joyful movement through the world, via dragon riding, reintroducing robust talent trees, and emphasizing a more optimistic, less apocalyptic narrative. Crucially, the development team demonstrated a remarkable responsiveness to player feedback, engaging openly with the community and making rapid, iterative changes. This renewed focus on player-centric design and communication has largely been met with praise, solidifying a positive trajectory for Retail WoW that many feared had been lost. Looking to the future, Blizzard has unveiled its most ambitious narrative endeavor yet: the World Soul Saga. Announced as a multi-expansion storyline beginning with the War Within and continuing through Midnight and the Last Titan, this saga signals a long-term commitment to World of Warcraft's narrative and a deliberate attempt to weave together decades of lore into a cohesive, culminating narrative. This move indicates a renewed confidence in the game's long-term viability and a desire to attract new generations of players while reigniting the passion of veterans. However, the journey ahead is not without its challenges. Blizzard must continue to balance the divergent desires of its retail and classic player bases, ensure sustained content delivery to avoid stagnation, and find ways to attract new players in an increasingly competitive and diverse gaming landscape. Adapting to evolving monetization models, dealing with the persistent issues of toxicity, and ensuring a healthy internal development culture will remain ongoing battles. Ultimately, World of Warcraft's place in history is cemented. It is not merely a successful video game. It is a cultural behemoth that undeniably defined an era of online gaming and the MMORPG genre. It normalized online interaction, forged countless real-world connections, provided an unexpected lens for scientific study, and inspired countless other games. Its unique role as a living museum of nearly 2 decades of game design evolution, community building, and digital culture ensures its continued relevance. From the first chaotic launch day in 2004, through its zenith of 12 million subscribers, its periods of struggle, and its recent resurgence, World of Warcraft has been more than just a game. It has been a world. A place where digital echoes of conflict and camaraderie resonate, where epic tales unfold, and where millions have found not just entertainment, but community, purpose, and even a profound sense of belonging. The journey has been long, complex, and full of trials, but Azeroth remains awake, its future unwritten, inviting new and old adventurers alike to continue the chronicle.